Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 215 of the Book Cougars, two middle-aged women on the hunt for a good read. I'm Emily.
And I'm Chris. And we're going to call this our Midwest episode.
Woo, woo, for the Midwest.
Yeah, so I am in Chicago and Emily's up in Michigan, Traverse City.
Yeah, some people who maybe haven't been listening since the beginning don't realize that we actually are Midwest transplants living in Connecticut. So somehow it seems fitting that there'd be a Midwest episode at some point.
Exactly. And we didn't meet until we moved to Connecticut. So, yeah.
That's right. I
can also call this the Oak Leaf Mites episode, because for those of you who have been in the Midwest, in the area where the 17-year cicadas came out recently, now these little mites are eating the eggs that all those cicadas left and also biting the humans in the area. And it's really awful. It is so itchy and it leaves a rash. And I have one on my face. So lucky me.
The gentleman caller is fond of saying, we humans may not be here forever, but the bugs will.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I'm so sorry you're itchy.
Yeah. On less itchy and gross news, we would really love to thank our latest patron. Thank you to CG.
Yes, we appreciate you so much. And good on you for getting in before our fall fund drive, which is coming up.
Yeah, not always. We sometimes do seasonal membership drives for patrons over on Patreon. And if you'd like to beat the rush, feel free to become a member now. Anything from $1 up is super helpful. And you can do the monthly option or now the annual option. And that's what we meant last episode when we said people renewed. They renewed at the annual option.
Yeah, which only comes up once a year.
Yeah.
And you can also do the monthly option where you just give us a little bit to help each month. And we appreciate any way that you can help to support the podcast. Reminder, if you're a patron at any level, $1 or above, you are eligible and automatically entered to win our monthly book giveaways. And if you are a patron at the $5 and above level, we do a monthly reading salon the fourth Sunday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we talk bookish things for an hour.
Yeah, and we just started that this year in 2024, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really has. So, Chris, what are you currently reading in the Midwest?
Well, I'm reading a book set in England, actually, here in the Midwest. I don't know where the author's from. That would have been something to look up. I am reading The Perils of Lady Catherine de Bourgh by Claudia Gray. And this is the third book in her Mr. Darcy and Miss Tilney mystery series. I read one before in the past. So I should say this is just come out in June, and it's exactly 400 pages. According to Goodreads. I'm reading an advanced reader copy. Thank you so much to the publisher for sending that. So this series takes the childs of different Jane Austen characters, a boy child and a girl child. They are teenagers now. Well, they're always teenagers in this series. I think at this point they're 18. And they are amateur sleuths, which is a really great idea. Yeah. I think in the one I read, Willoughby from Sense and Sensibility was the one who died, which, I mean, she picks really good characters to kill off or imperil. For those of you who've read Pride and Prejudice, she's a very wealthy, condescending, narcissistic woman who is, if somebody has to die, well, it's a murder mystery. So I'm enjoying it so far. I'm just a little bit over 30% in, and it's fun. So Lady Catherine, there's been 3 attempts on her life, and she's reached out for help, which is, shocking. And even though she's asked out for help, she's still condescending as all get out. So she's had 3 attempts. She's going to be updating her will, but maybe not everybody knows what's going to be in that will, which is nothing like significant. I mean, it is to one person, but so I think right now I'm at the point where there's going to be another attempt. We'll see.
Like fun. It also sounds like they would be much more enjoyable if you've read the novels. the
Oh,
Jane
for
Austen
sure.
novels, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I think they work as well as if you haven't, but I think you get so much more pleasure and enjoyment because there's a lot of inside jokes
Right.
about things. So this book, I am considering it to work for both Sue Jackson's Big Book Summer. It's probably going to be the last one I read for that, or finish, I should say. And then it's also qualifying for the Book Cougars bingo card because it is a Pride and Prejudice related book.
Yeah. But it's a murder mystery. So we'll see if there's actually love.
There is
right?
romance.
Okay.
There is, there's tension between these two teenagers.
Okay.
Will they, won't they kind of thing.
All right.
So it's a hybrid. Again, that's The Perils of Lady Catherine de Bourgh by Claudia Gray.
I'm reading a book that I saw our friend Karen over at Barker for Books on social media read, and she writes the best reviews. If you're not following her, I really recommend that you do. They're short and sweet and really give you insight into whether you want to put a book on your TBR, move it up, or take it off.
Right. Yeah. It's not just all glory. It's sometimes, what is that old sports thing? The agony of defeat. It's not quite that intense, but she's a quite honest reviewer.
Yes. And this one's called Margot's Got Money Trouble by Ruthie Thorpe. And it's got a very compelling cover with this woman that's kind of splayed out face down on the couch, just looking like life is hard. And Karen actually did a recreation of the cover with herself in a book. And she said, my husband asked me if I'm supposed to look dead or not.
Apparently they had a fun time doing the photo shoot.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Karen, for providing a little humor as well with your review. This is about 19-year-old Margot, who went off to junior college and got in a relationship with her professor and got pregnant and is handling the consequences of that right now. I'm just at the very beginning and I'm listening to it via Libro FM. I received an ALC, an advanced listener copy of the book, and it's narrated by the actress Elle Fanning. And so far, I'm really enjoying the narration, but I haven't gotten very far into it at all. And I have to admit that it might be a little too close to home to be reading this book right now when I'm just taking care of my daughter's newborn baby. So I'm going to give it a little bit more time, but I'm not sure. But I can tell already that it's going to be funny. And I did do a little poking around the interwebs about the author, Ruthie Thorpe, because she has such a compelling name. And I was like, I know I've heard her name before. And this is not her first novel. And so after I read some interviews with her and stuff, I'm like, oh, I do really want to keep going with this. But maybe this book might not be the best of her novels to read. I think this might be her fourth. So more to come on that. I'm not sure if I might have to put this one away for a little bit, but I am going to listen a little bit more before I make that decision. And again, this is called Margot's Got Money Trouble by Ruthie Thorpe.
Nice. Well, the audiobook I'm listening to is The Truths We Hold, An American Journey by Kamala Harris. This came out in 2019. It's 9 hours, 26 minutes, and she does narrate it, which is fabulous. So I'm enjoying it. I was listening to it, walking around the airport. So I haven't had time to listen to it while I'm here with mom, but I plan on picking it back up again. I'm at the point, so it's kind of like her life story. It's not like a policy kind of book. It's her life story and her beliefs and things like that. So I'm at the point now where she's just gone off to college.
Do you think it's true that I thought I read somewhere that people can't run for president unless they've written a book?
Well, that's certainly become the new way to get yourself out there. I mean, look at J.D. Vance and his Hillbilly Elegy. When you and I read that, we both kind of felt like it had vibes of this dude's going to run for office someday, because at that point he wasn't or hadn't yet. So, I think it's a way to get your name out there.
Yeah.
And then for people to look for information. I mean, I guess the thing is it is smart, right? If you plan on running for office, to have something out there that you've written that people can access, it's probably really smart because, there's so much misinformation on the internet and.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. I'm glad you're reading. What year did you say it came out?
2019.
Oh, 19. Okay.
Yeah, 2019. So yeah.
What's it called again?
It is called The Truths We Hold, An American Journey. It reminds me of Barack Obama's book, The Audacity of Hope. I could be confusing it because I read The Audacity of Hope and also Dreams of My Father. So it's kind of that life story type thing with some parental background as well.
Oh.
Yeah, enjoyable very much so. The DNC's going on right now as I'm here. It was a lot of fun when I landed. I landed on the Saturday before the Democratic National Convention, and I was going down to baggage claim, and there was somebody handing out welcome to O'Hare and Midway keychains, courtesy of the mayor of Chicago. And then they had a lot of volunteers standing around with DNC signs if you had any questions. And then they held the whole baggage claim area was decked out in red, white, and blue with bunting and red, white, and blue stars. It was really quite nice.
Imagine if you were like an international traveler and you had no idea what was going on. That would be so interesting. How fun, though. They were just welcoming you back to Chicago.
Yeah, it was quite nice. Quite nice. Yeah. I talked to one of the volunteers, too, and I just said, how's it going and how many people are you expecting? I don't know how many people were expecting to come here through O'Hare, she said, but I have other friends who tried to volunteer, but they had so many volunteers that they had to turn away thousands of people.
Wow, that's encouraging.
Yeah. And the woman I spoke with who was a volunteer, she said, yeah, even the volunteers, we can't get extra shifts, even if we wanted them. They're trying to at least get the people they could take in, give them at least one shift, obviously, of something that they could do for the cause.
Oh.
So what have you just read? How's the reading going up there?
I have to admit, I've not been reading very much. I feel like I've gone through a little patch, Chris, that I remember you went through not too long ago, where I'm starting books and being like, oh, not this one. Starting another, not this one, and just said, with Margot's Got Money Trouble, I might end up doing it with that, but we'll see if that one sticks. But what I did read and really enjoy is called Hot Air by Marcy Dermansky. This book doesn't come out until March 18th. Thank you to Knopf, who sent us an advanced reader copy. And Marcy Dermansky is the queen of the 200-page novel, which is one thing I love about her. She writes in the only way I can describe it is it's like a clipped fashion. Her paragraphs can be one sentence, just really to the point. And I love her sentence structure and the way she writes. She tends to write very strong female characters. They don't always seem strong, maybe the way the story is, but I think of them that way. And this book starts, we're just barely post-pandemic. So people have been in their homes for quite some time. These two people, Johnny and Joni, are having a first date. And they're having the first date at Johnny's house because they're both single parents. And their kids are downstairs watching a movie. They're out in his backyard by the pool having a drink. And a hot air balloon comes off course and lands in the pool. And Joni proceeds to jump in, and then she rescues the billionaire that was mispiloting the balloon. His name is Jonathan. It's a lot of J's. And then his wife, Julia. And they are celebrating their anniversary. Their marriage isn't going well. So Jonathan thought it'd be a great idea to take her up in a hot air balloon. And the fact that it crashes in the pool signifies how their marriage is going, I think. And then they decide to have drinks together, and the story kind of takes off from there. And it's told from the different characters' point of view back and forth in chapters. It's really a take on marriage, money, parenthood. I just enjoyed it. And her books are kind of plot-driven in a strange way. It's not like you're waiting for something to finish from start to finish. It's how are these characters going to all intermingle together is kind of how the plot is to me. It's not going to be for everyone. I feel like that anytime I read one of her books. Her last one was called Hurricane Girl, and it was about the opening chapter. This woman has put all her money into buying a house on the beach because she always wanted a beach house, and then it gets swept away in a hurricane the week she's bought it, and then her life devolves from there, and it turns into a little bit of a revenge fantasy story, I feel like. Yeah, I loved that one. I've been thinking about your term with Ann Napolitano that I'm a completist. Is that what you called it?
A completist. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, oh, with Marcy Dermansky, I would only have maybe one or two of her little short novels to become one. So maybe I'll do that.
Nice.
Yeah. So I would say that if you're interested in very short novel, very fast paced writing, to look Marcy Dermansky up and read one of her novels that's already out. This one, like I said, you'll have to wait until March, but it's worth the wait. Hot Air by Marcy Dermansky.
Nice. Well, I'm reading one that's not coming out until September 10th, and it's called So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. And this is one I mentioned last episode that I had been reading, and I really enjoyed it. This is her 7th novel. So she's been out there working. This is a vampire novel. I want to thank Berkeley and Nat Galley for letting me have access to the ARC, because I was looking for a good vampire tale. And this is a best friend novel, road trip novel, vampire novel with some other things sprinkled in. How about that? It's about a woman named Sloane Parker who is approaching a significant birthday and just is down in the dumps in her life and thinks it's fine. Everything's fine. And she's not happy. Her husband's cheating on her. She's mainly attached to her vacuum cleaner in the peach tree out front. But she has this best friend. They've been best friends since their teenage years. Her friend Naomi, who's been madly in love with her boyfriend of, I think, more than 10 years. And he has a band that's hit it big and they've been touring Europe. But the cheating husband, Sloane's cheating husband, sets up this long weekend for the two of them to go to a resort type place where they have little cottages or cabins. So he surprises her with this. She doesn't really want to go, but Naomi's coming in from Europe for this. Naomi's the wild child who's always out doing things, and Sloane is the one who's always playing it safe, but who loves disaster stories. And this is an interesting thing. So it's one of those novels you think, oh, this is really light and fun. And then when you finish it, you do kind of start putting some pieces together a little bit more. Because at times I thought the characters were a little bit stereotypical and light in a lot of ways, but Sloane is somebody who's really into disaster stories. And there are several that are mentioned throughout the novel. She's interested in them because it's all about choices. Like, if only different choices had been made. And it's also a very feminist novel because there's some, great lines too about Sloane saying, men who I've never met who have beliefs that are different from mine are trying to control what I can do with my own body, the choices that I have with my own body. So it's really one of those novels too, where you're nodding your head like, yeah, which you don't always necessarily get in a vampire novel because traditionally they're very patriarchal, I guess you could say. I enjoyed this a lot. It made me want to read more from Harrison, and I will definitely give another one of her books a try. I think this is her first vampire story, though. She does write about different monsters in each book. I know there's a werewolf one I'm interested in, but this one has a lot of good dark humor. There is some sex and some gore. I didn't feel the sparks with the love interest at all. So that to me is one of those things that felt like it was in there to be in there and didn't really grab me. But it's coming out in September, just in time for the spooky time of year. If you like to read horror novels, vampire novels, dark and creepy things, this would be a good one. And she did do some cool things that I haven't seen done with different types of vampires. And it has a cool cover. So That's always a good plus. Yeah. So this one again is So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. And it's coming out September 10th from Berkeley.
Right on. Well, I did read 2 short stories for my continued short story project. I have to say I did them both on audio, which was interesting. I think I've done a couple on audio so far. The first one is from a book of short stories that I have talked about before because we got an advanced reader copy, a physical copy, a few months before it came out, but it is now available. It's called The Goodbye Process by Mary Jones. This is a book out from Zibby Books. Zibby Owens started her own publishing imprint, and this is one of them. And when the audiobook starts, it's actually an introduction from Zibby saying, welcome to this book, and this is our first short story collection that we've published, which I thought was interesting. And I had read the first two. This was the collection where the first two stories were super short and very compelling. And I skipped ahead just to one kind of caught my interest, and it was called The Hexter Girls, Hexter. And it's about three sisters who are being raised by a single mother. They live in an upstairs apartment, a couple buildings down from a funeral home. And they get into mischief by putting some towels over the porch railing and getting squirt guns and kind of spraying people through this little space as they're walking to a funeral or a wake. And they do it in such a way that people are like, oh, it's starting to rain, or, oh, a bird just peed on me, or whatever. They just don't know what's going on. But one time they spray someone, and it happens to be Miss Davies, who's the local librarian.
Ruh-roh.
And she goes out all librarian on them, like, come here. Let's talk about this. And there's one part of the short story where one of the girls says, Miss Davies, who shamed us for taking too long to read a book or something that should have taken us a week to read, and we turned it in late or something. I can't remember. It just made me laugh out loud. A librarian keeping kids on task. But it becomes very poignant because she goes in and takes them into the funeral home and shows them who she's going to visit. So it was not a very long story, but quite compelling, and I enjoyed it. And I think I will probably end up reading every story in this collection. Thank you, I should say, to Libro FM, because this one was one that I had also gotten as an advanced listener copy. But as I said, it is available now. And then the other one, I was just going out for a walk, and it was Monday, and I wanted to read or listen to a short story. So I tuned into Levar Burton Reads, which is a podcast. I mean, it's probably available also online if you want to look for it that way. And I just kind of scrolled through. He's got so many. He reads short stories. And I came across one that was called The Many Taste Grooves of the Chang Family, which really caught my eye. And it's by Allison King. Levar Burton talks about the story before he reads it, and then he talks about it after, relating it to something in his own life. And one thing he said when he introduced it was that he's a bit of a foodie. So this short story was very compelling to him. And it's about a Taiwanese American family whose father, or as they refer to him, Ba, has dementia. And Ba asks them to get him this mouthpiece, kind of an AI-ish type of a thing or something that they can plug into his nose and his mouth, and it helps him recreate a flavor that will then, when you have a sensory experience, it brings back memories, is essentially what the short story is about.
Well,
yeah, have you had that experience where you smell something or you hear a song or you taste something and it can take you right back?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what this short story is about. And he particularly wants to recreate this chop suey that he had at a restaurant. And they even talk about like how the kids, he has two children, and how they hate chop suey, and of course that's the thing he wants to go back and recreate. And Allison King is a fantasy writer. So it was interesting that she combined her love and interest in writing fantasy and created a short story where there was this contraption that would allow people to go back in time with their memories of food. So there are some great food descriptions. It was also poignant about children working through their parents' dementia and what happens there. There was a little bit of humor with Ba, like removing his teeth at one point and scaring a child at a restaurant, So I really enjoyed it. The only thing I will say about both of these listening experiences, for the goodbye process, and, this was an advanced listener copy. I don't know, when we get ARC books, sometimes there's typos or some missing material that they're going to add later. With the advanced listening copy of Goodbye Process, they were just tracks. They didn't have chapters, which was weird because the stories have a name. So I don't know why they didn't have the name of the story as the chapter heading instead of track 7.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if they'll have somebody introducing it or something. Who knows?
Yeah. Or maybe it'll be when it's finished. I mean, I didn't look. I just had this in my Libro app. So, and then with Levar Burton's, they had some sound effects and stuff. And I was listening with my earbuds. And as I was doing this walk, dialogue would come in on my right ear and then something else would come in on my left ear. And it was so distracting. So I don't know what that was all about. Didn't keep me from listening to the story till the end, but I just thought, no, that's kind of weird. So again, that one was called The Many Taste Brews of the Chang Family by Allison King. And I didn't bother to look up if that came from a collection. I apologize. But if it did, I will put that in the show notes.
Yeah, smell and taste. I mean, gosh, Book Cougars headquarters, the building where the office currently is, smells to me like my childhood's dentist office.
I know you said that the first time you came in.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow. And I can't identify the smell. I mean, I know there's some medical offices in there, but I don't know.
There's medical offices and a printer, which is like ink. So I don't know. I mean, when you said that, I was like, oh my God, if that happened to me, I don't know if I could come here because the dentist is not my favorite place. Yeah. Apologies to any of you out there listening who might be a dentist or a dental hygienist.
Well, I liked my childhood dentist. Dr. Babcock was his name. And I just remember he had the biggest fingers, like they were big and thick. And I remember thinking, like, how is he getting all of that in my mouth?
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. So TMI, maybe.
That's a real childhood memory right there. So I also read one children's book, and this is not a children's book I could read to Nina yet. My daughter Rachel has an incredible bookshelf of books already that she's been buying or has gotten as gifts. When I went to her baby shower, a lot of people gave her books. But this one just caught my eye, and it's so beautiful. It's called SULWE by the actress Lupita Nyong'o. And SULWE means star in Dulo, and her mother is from Kenya. So that's where the title comes from. And this is a children's book. Probably, I would say, I mean, you could start reading it to a toddler, but I would say kids in the 8 to 10-year-old range would really appreciate it. And that, of course, always depends on your child. But it's about colorism, and it's semi-autobiographical about Nyong'o growing up and having very dark skin and her younger sister having lighter skin, and all the cooing and coddling that her sister got about how beautiful she was. Nyong'o noticing she didn't get the same praise. Not that her family didn't love her, and her mother always talked to her about how beautiful she was in her own right, but it was how people reacted to her sister's lighter skin. In 2014, Lupita was invited to speak at the Essence Black Women in Hollywood luncheon. I believe she was being honored for being like a newcomer to Hollywood or something. And she told a story about a young woman who wrote a letter to her and said that she was going to start trying to dye her skin and making her skin lighter until this actress broke out onto the scene and really showed her that dark skin is beautiful. She gave this beautiful speech, and the reaction to the speech and getting that letter is what inspired her to work on this children's book. And it's such a beautiful story, and it's illustrated by a woman named Vashti Harrison. The illustrations are really beautiful, and the little girl, SULWE, ends up going on this journey at night, and it's about the importance of nighttime and daytime, and that's kind of the metaphor she uses for dark skin being beautiful. So I just loved this little book. It's really about self-esteem and finding beauty within. So if you're looking for something like that to give as a gift or to read to your little one, I highly recommend it. Again, it's called SULWE, which is spelled SULWE. I'm enjoying having a children's bookshelf to read from.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah. So, Chris, did you go on any biblioadventures?
I have. I'm so surprised. I don't know why. I feel like, we always do, it seems like. And then when you travel, you run into things, obviously, right? So one of the things I forgot to mention that I just want to give a shout out to from last episode, when I was recounting the biblioadventures that our friend Colleen and I went on when she was in town visiting, we went to the Odyssey bookshop in South Hadley, Massachusetts, and that's where Mount Holyoke is. And I just want to give a shout out to that bookstore because it's really wonderful. But in terms of new biblioadventures, I went up to Tunxus community college library to meet with the new librarian friend, and beautiful library. You know, it's modern, but it has such a lovely nod to the gorgeous library in Dublin.
Oh, yeah.
The Trinity Library, you know, with that big main center. Really wonderfully done. So that was great to see. And of course, I went over to their bookstore and had a nice browse. Looking at textbooks is just so much fun to see what everybody's teaching and what newer books are being taught and what doesn't seem to be around quite anymore. But then after that, I drove a little further north to Unionville, which is also Farmington. So it's like, I don't know if it's a situation like with Essex, where you have Essex and Ivoryton being part of it. I'm not really sure how that works out, but the Unionville Historical Society building is actually an old library. It was a Carnegie library built in 1917, and it's a mini version of the Boston Public Library.
Oh, how cool.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. Yes. And you can see some architectural similarities. I took a bunch of photos, and I'm sure I'll do a blog post about it. And I didn't go back to look at my photos of the Boston Public Library, but that was the intention, to do a mini version, because that building was such a big splash in the library world. So it's like the Renaissance revival style. The museum wasn't open when I was there, but I did read online that it's very close to how it looked in 1917. Like, they haven't needed to do a lot. I guess they've done a good job keeping up with the maintenance on it. So I would love to go back up there and get to peek around inside. So it became a museum in 1984, I believe. And while I was walking around taking pictures, there's a fire department right next door. So one of the guys chatted with me about the building and just how that area had changed over the decades. So that was fun. And then just down the street from that, there is a double header little free library situation in a gazebo.
Ooh.
Isn't that the coolest? That's one thing that the guy pointed out to me. He's like, yeah, there's this really wonderful little gazebo, and you could see it when you're standing out front of the library or the museum now. So I did walk over there, and this park, it's dedicated to a woman named Alice Clovey Pinney, Pinney. And her dates were 1886 to 1973. And apparently, you know, she was a really big person in the community, did a lot for the community. I haven't been able to find much about her online yet, but I haven't really dug too deeply. So this gorgeous gazebo is dedicated to her. And then on the entrance to the gazebo on either side is a little free library. And of course, I did take photos, so stay tuned for that. One is for adult books, the other one's for kids' books. And it's really funny because I saw in the adult little free library, they had a book by Margaret Truman, who is a mystery writer, who's Harry Truman's daughter. She was really popular, I believe, in the 90s, maybe a little before and after. And the book of hers that they had was Murder in the CIA. And I knew her, and I knew I wanted to try something by her. And so seeing that there, I was like, oh, that's really kind of cool. But I wanted to read one that was set in the Smithsonian, is the one I was looking for. So I thought, I'm not going to take this one. I'm going to look for the one in the Smithsonian. So I left it there.
And you posted something about that on social media with a picture of that book, and people went wild.
Yes, a lot of people have read her and really loved her. So, okay, I'm going to fast forward ahead to being here in Illinois. And I went to 2 used bookstores. I went to the Frugal Muse in Darien, Illinois, looking for that Truman book, Murder in the Smithsonian. They did not have that one, but they had a bunch of other ones by her, both in hardcover and the mass market size. But I didn't get anything because I'm trying to only buy like the book that I'm intending to get, right? Because impulse control has to happen somehow, right?
At some point.
Yes. So then more recently, I went to Half Price Books in a town called Downers Grove. They had a lot of Margaret Truman there, but they did not have the one I wanted, which is like, so is that one not as popular? Was it super popular? Do people just not want to give it up? Who knows? So you know what I did?
You ordered it?
No, I'm trying not to do that either. Cause like, I love being on the hunt, you know?
Yeah.
I bought a copy of Murder in the CIA. which is the one that I saw at that little free library that I didn't take. And I thought, you know what? Maybe it's meant to be that that's the one that I read, right?
Yes. Someone was trying to drop that hint really hard, and it took you shopping at 2 used bookstores to figure it out. I can totally relate.
A couple states away, right? So that is the one I will start with. Yeah, it's just fun to have a mission when you go into a used bookstore.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It reminds me of when we were hunting for Jurassic Park for The Gentleman Caller by Michael Crichton. And it just, you see Michael Crichton novels in almost every little free library, but we could never find that. And when we went to the Book Barn, the guy working at the one downtown that has those books, he said, you rarely see a Jurassic Park. And we were like, did they not print as many? Is it popular? All those questions you were just asking. And he said, most people keep it, or it's just so popular that if it comes in, it's off the shelf right away.
Right. Or, I imagine too, like with those mass markets, they only survive so many readings before they start falling apart. So I imagine that's a book that got handed around a lot in families and friends groups.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I've been walking by this beautiful ivy-covered brick building the few times I've gone into downtown Traverse City. And, I usually count on you and the Gentleman Caller to read plaques out front of buildings. But I was like, Emily, you could actually do this. And there's this beautiful green historical plaque kind of curbside in front of the building. So finally I stopped the other day. I was doing an evening stroll. And it is called the Ladies Library Association. I shouldn't say it's called. It's now a lawyer's office. The plaque says Ladies Library Association. And what this building was originally used for was that 8 women met to organize the Traverse City Ladies Library Association on July 23rd, 1869.
Oh, that's so cool.
Isn't that cool? Their constitution was adopted on the 28th, and it allowed any lady to join the library for $1. And then it cost 25 cents each quarter to, quote, draw books. And before long, they did allow men to borrow materials. The library was open on Fridays between 3 and 4:30 o'clock. I love that. And they had lectures and fairs and socials and festivals to raise funds. And by its first annual meeting, so by July of 1870, they had 329 books that they purchased, and donated books and magazines and newspapers. Isn't that so cool? And it's had, cool. I did look it up online. It's had other incarnations because the library, eventually it turned into, they got a public library in town, and now it is a lawyer's office. And when I was out there taking pictures, a lawyer came out with the classic briefcase, and I thought that was really funny. But I will post some pictures of this on social media. It's just a beautiful, really compelling little building. Go Lovely. Ladies.
Yeah, totally. Readers.
Yes, nice. Exactly. I would love to know what those 329 books were, but
I know. And I wonder if they've been donated to the local library, if they have a little local history section.
Oh, I should check that out because I've been spending some time at the public library down the street. Yeah. I'll see if I can figure that out. Cool. Good idea.
Well, I went to 2 other bookstores so far here in Illinois. I did check out the new Barnes & Noble in Oswego, Illinois, which used to be cornfields back in the day, and now it's all developed and really nice community. This is their new format. This is a store. So some episodes ago, last year when I was here visiting Mom, the big Barnes & Noble in a town called Naperville, Illinois, was closing. Huge store. It was a big anchor store in the old downtown area, 2 stories, really beloved location. But they were closing that to build this new location, which is a little further west. So it was fun to visit the old location one more time. The new location has the same furniture setup as the one that you and I visited, Emily, back in Long Island. Lovely store. And it's much bigger than that location. It's bigger. It has a cafe as well. Super friendly staff, very friendly. I ended up buying 1 book. They didn't have any Margaret Truman. She's not carried in new stores anymore, at least not that I've come across because I've been looking everywhere. But I did finally decide to buy a book I've been considering trying again. I haven't tried it since I was either a kid or a very young adult. but that is The Hobbit.
Uh,
So,
which I have claimed is one of my favorite books of all
yes,
time. It's the
yes,
book that I read in sixth grade that made me realize that books could take you away to alternate realities.
yes. Yeah. So one of the things that pushed me over the edge to getting this book, and it's been on my mind, I do have to say, was the shelf talker that one of the employees wrote. This is a shelf talker. Group of adventurers kidnap an old man and force him on a quest. And that cracked me up.
When I saw that picture, I laughed so hard. And
Yeah.
I'm going to live vicariously through you because I've contemplated reading it again and I'm afraid. It's one of those where it's like, "Ooh, will it hold up and will I change my feelings about it completely?" So I'll just let you read it and tell me what you think.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, we could do the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogy next year as our read along.
Oh my gracious. That I never wanted to read Lord of the Rings. That's
Oh,
funny.
really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I read the first one
Hmm.
and I didn't proceed with the others. Not that I didn't particularly like it, but, I just didn't go on at that time. Just kidding, folks. We're not going to be doing
No.
the Lord of the
Everyone's
Rings
like, we're
next year.
bailing now.
I know, right?
Not that there's anything wrong with those books.
No, not at all. I just don't, I mean, that's just definitely a choice, like a taste choice,
Yeah.
I think. Well, as is everything, right? Then the other bookstore I went to was a new one to me anyway. So it's my mom's 85th birthday. And we went to a town called Geneva, Illinois, which is a historic town. It was really important 19th century town. And there's a lot of great shopping there, a lot of cute little stores. There's one that's really famous called The Little Traveler. And we were walking around, gorgeous weather. I lucked out being here this week because it's just been super lovely weather. And I saw a sandwich board sign on a corner, and it was To Harvey's Tales, Books and Other Diversions, with an arrow pointing. I was like, oh, hey, here we go. So we turned right and went down the street. It was right there. Such a lovely store. It's in an old little smaller Victorian house, like an L-shaped house. The 2 floors, they have a cafe, and then they have this wonderful outdoor seating area with garden flowers and everything. So we got coffees and we sat out in the garden for quite a while and just talked and drank our coffees and had a wonderful time. And they had a whole room in their upstairs, so it's in a house. So there are all these lovely nooks and crannies. And in one of what had been probably a closet, they had banned books, a room dedicated just to banned books. And my sister and I were just blown away because almost all of those books, at least half of them, if not more, were all books we read in school when we were kids.
Yeah. Nina someone gave her a little onesie, a pink onesie that says, I read banned books. And so Rachel had this idea to put her down on a blanket and then look at all the books already on her bookshelf that are banned books.
Yeah.
And one of them was that SULWE, actually. And we started putting them down and then reading about why they were banned. And some of it was just really shocking. Follow-up to that story is we could never get a good picture because trying to take a picture of a baby and a bunch of books is really hard. Yeah. But the idea was there. It is shocking when you start to look at them. So to see them in a room like that must have been really surprising to you.
Yeah, it was. It was a really wonderful bookstore. And they have Harvey is a dog, a Bernese mountain dog. So that's their logo, is the portrait of the dog. And then they had a fireplace with chairs there and a lovely mantle. And they had a Lego version of Harvey up there, which was really cool to see and really well done. So lovely bookstore. You know what? I didn't think to ask how long they've been there, and I haven't checked out their website yet or anything. But if you're in Geneva, in that area, check them out.
Oh boy, how fun.
Yeah.
That's great. And so great when you just go and meander and then find a sign pointing to books.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And my mom and my sister, I mean, they're bookworms as well. So, but they don't mind stopping at every little free library and taking photos and stuff. Even when we walked out of the Barnes and Noble, my sister's like, "You want me to take your picture?" So,
That's so great.
yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So I had this huge bag full, and Karen again said, "Hey, I can't wait to hear about your haul." And it's just like all of that stuff in there was my mom and my sister's. I just bought The Hobbit, but they stocked up because these new Barnes and Nobles, and I'm sure the older stores too, have this similar sidelines, but just great gifts.
Yeah.
We already bought some holiday gifts and stuff.
Lovely. I'm so glad you're gallivanting with them.
Yeah. And I should say, related to our year of reading romance, there was a wall of romance books, and my sister thought they were like kids' books because they're all those pink pastel-y cutesy covers. So that led to a conversation about what you and I have been discovering, and of course, other people who read romance, that some of these cutesy covers have really hardcore material on the inside, and how misleading that could be, and or how you could miss it, because a lot of people do think it's young adults because of the cartoony nature of the covers.
It's such an interesting change that's taking place.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens in the future with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think they're missing sales, and I think some of the sales might be getting complaints about it.
Yeah.
Because, if it's not necessarily age appropriate, we'll keep our investigative reporter hats on for that one.
Yes. Report back. So what about any upcoming jaunts?
Well, while I was driving around up in Farmington/Unionville area, I drove past the Lewis Walpole Library. Do you remember that when you and I were at the Sterling Library, Yale's Gothic library, for an open house one time? They had all of the directors of the various libraries there for this big open house, beginning of the semester type thing. And we talked to the librarian there who was at the Lewis Walpole Library. And so I kind of did that. What is that? As I'm driving down the road, So I think that's a destination for us. Maybe sometime this fall. He was known for several different things, but the novel that he's known for is The Castle of Otranto, which was written in 1764. And it's considered one of the first, probably the first Gothic novel. And his home, he had an ancestral home that I think he added Gothic elements to. We'll learn about him more when we visit, probably. But Yale also published his letters, which is something like almost 50 volumes. So he was a prolific letter writer as well.
And what was the name of that book? I think you went out for a second when you said it.
The Castle of Otranto. It's Otranto. Otranto.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have one that I'm kind of excited about. It's based on a novel called The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat. That novel was written by Edward Kelsey Moore. It came out in 2013, and he was one of the authors at a Booktopia. Booktopia were these events that Anne Kingman and Michael Kindness used to put on. They were the co-hosts of Books on the Nightstand podcast, which is now Sunset. But how Chris and I met originally was we both attended a Booktopia. I tried to look it up. I could not figure out which Booktopia he was at. Linda Johnson, if you're listening, please let us know. But what a lovely man. I loved this novel. It's about a group of women who, I believe they grew up together and kind of how their lives are going. And they call themselves the Supremes. Anyway, I won't go into depth about that, but I was shocked to find that it's been made into a movie. And the movie is coming out on August 23rd, which is this week as we record. So I will have watched it by the time we record episode 216. But if you were a Booktopian that heard Edward Kelsey Moore speak or just read along as Anne and Michael created reading lists for Booktopias, and you didn't know this was being made into a movie, yippee! It is on Hulu, so you have to, I don't know if you could just go in and get a month or something if you want to watch a movie on these different streaming services. I have no idea, but I'm super excited. to know about it. And I should say the way that I found out was kind of circuitous because I was listening to an interview with an actress who's in it. And I was just listening to this interview. I had no idea about this movie or anything. So very exciting.
That's a fun find. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. So upcoming reads.
We have a buddy read.
Yes.
Envy by Sandra Brown is our third quarter read along. So excited to be getting started with this one. Reminder that our Zoom conversation will take place on September 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Email us at bookcougars@gmail.com if you'd like to join in. We have a Goodreads thread going already. We'll put all of this in the show notes so you can participate on the Goodreads thread anytime.
Yes, I brought my mass market copy with me to read on the plane or to start on the plane going back to Connecticut. I can't wait.
Yeah, I left my copy at home. And I think it's just going to be like when I get home next week, I'm going to get in the hammock and read.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. And I have a feeling from what people are posting about what a page turner it is that it'll be the perfect one for that reset back home.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, and we'll be more active on that Goodreads thread too as we dig into reading it.
Yeah, and please let us know your thoughts there. And reminder, if you have spoilers, just, asterisk and say spoiler alert and then go wild. And then I also have a cookbook that should be waiting for me at the Guilford Library when I get home. It's called What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking by Carolyn Chambers. And she goes by Caro, C-A-R-O. Very active on social media. This is a woman whose career kind of fell apart when the pandemic started. And so she got very active on social media and started asking people like, what's in your fridge? And I'll help you cook a meal, because that's when everyone was inside and losing their minds a little bit. And then she just started a Substack newsletter and her career just completely took off. And now she has the #1 food blog on Substack.
That's cool. Good for her.
And her cookbook has really taken off. And her recipes are really about that. Quick, easy. And one thing she does too is if she encourages you to go buy a condiment to use in the preparation or something, she'll reuse it in future recipes. So you don't end up just buying these esoteric ingredients and having a refrigerator full of them that you never use again. I will report more on that when I have it in my little hands when I get back to Connecticut.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to us being back together and going on a biblioadventure and recording in the same room again. It'll be lovely to get reconnected.
Oh my gosh, it'll be so nice. I'm going to have you right by my side. We might have to use one microphone next time. I'm going to be so excited to see you. Oh my gosh, everyone. Let us know what you're reading, please, out on the socials and in Goodreads, etc.
Yeah, or send us an email, bookcougars@gmail.com. We love getting your emails about what you're reading, recommendations you have for us, or biblioadventures you've been on. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, everybody.
Happy reading. Thanks for listening to The Book Cougars with Chris Wallach and Emily Fine. We'll be back again with another episode in 2 weeks. Until then, come chat with us on social media, Goodreads, or email us at bookcougars@gmail.com. If you'd like to help support our podcast, please tell others about us, leave a review wherever you listen, and consider becoming a patron. Even $1 a month is a big help. Learn more about that on our website, bookcougars.com, where you'll find the show notes for this and all of our past episodes.
Thanks, everybody.
This episode was edited by Pat Keogh Sound Design.